Let's have a conversation about your company's security. There's something called port security, where I'm at home right now, but imagine if I was in a corporate building right now in the lobby, and I have an Ethernet cord here plugged into a personal laptop. Now, if I plug this Ethernet cord into the wall, which it's not going to plug into because I don't actually have an internet port at home, that's a telephone port. If I plug my laptop into the lobby of a corporate building, then chances are I'm not going to get an internet connection because I'll be blocked by port security. However, I've worked for many companies where if I did plug that into the wall, it might work. And that is very bad because that means anybody like me could come off into the streets, go into this building and plug my laptop in and start hacking away. It doesn't take a genius with technical abilities to go onto YouTube and watch a few videos on how to hack a network. So today, I'm going to be showing you how to configure port security on your switches so that you can secure your company's network. Here we have a humble network. Before we dive into port security, let's do some exploring of this network so we can get an idea of what's going on. We have 3 layer 2 switches set up with their own VLANs, and they're all going through this router over here, which is routing on a stick. We have 6 different VLANs, all with their own IP networks. We have management, we have a VP with their laptop, we have accounting and HR over here, and we have engineers going through the switch, and sales and marketing are connected through a hub. For whatever reason, this looks like an older small business network. The switches are all configured with VTP, Virtual Trunking Protocol. This one is our server. Here's a transparent switch, and here is our VTP client, all relaying the VLAN information to each other the way they would with their current modes. Now, if we open up a switch and type in show VLAN brief, we will see all the VLANs here, and we will notice all the ports that aren't currently being used on the switch are sitting on our native VLAN. This can be a security vulnerability, yet it is easy to fix. All we would have to do is move all of these ports to a VLAN that we are not using. We can do this to all of our switches. Remember to enable a password on all of your network devices, ensuring that service password encryption is enabled. Make sure on your line console 0 that you also have a password enabled. On your line VTY to protect it from Telnet and SSH users. Let's talk about what makes a password secure. As you've realized, none of the passwords I've used are secure. They are all words like pinball or basketball. An example of a secure password would include an uppercase letter, at least a few numbers, and some symbols. Pinball 46 with an exclamation at the end, using a 1 instead of an I and a 4 instead. Now that we have passwords set for all devices, and all of the ports have been moved off of the native VLAN, we will now introduce our hacker. He enters the building with a laptop. And he's going to go ahead and plug in his copper straight through cable into a random port in the wall, which circles back into your switch 3. It'll connect to a random port on your switch. You'll notice that the laptop successfully connected to the switch. The user would now be able to open up his laptop and launch a series of applications that could seriously damage your network. So this is pretty bad. And even though we set passwords, he could still get into the network using some of the hacking softwares. Every single company and organization has DHCP configured on their network, meaning if I plug this laptop in, DHCP would hand me an IP address right now, and I could go onto this laptop and type in ipconfig and get the local gateway of this network, as well as the subnet mask of the IP address that gave it to me. This is how innocent applications such as DHCP can be used against you. So make sure you have port security and other security protocols set up on your network in order to protect yourself from hackers. Let me show you how to use port security to keep this hacker out of your network. So we have an option to secure all of these ports that aren't being used. And that option is we could shut them all down. However, this can get pretty tedious every time we have new hires or maybe a manager who's transferring from one office to a different office in the same building. And the office they're transferring to has a port that we shut down before. So that manager now calls desktop support and says, hey, how come I'm not getting an IP address? I need to get my work done. And then help desk calls you, the network engineer, and says, hey, we're trying to configure these computers. We're trying to plug them in, but there's no internet going there. So now you, the network engineer, you have to go back to that switch and enable those ports in order for people to get their productivity done. So as you can see, turning off all the ports just isn't a solution. So let's log into our switch. We'll put in my password and do show port security. Nothing comes up. Why is that? Interface 5, FA05, that's the one the hacker is plugged into. Here it will show us that it's disabled. So that's why it's not showing up anything when we type in show port security, because it's disabled. And by default, when you take the switch out of the box, the interface is automatically configured with the shutdown violation mode. This means that if this was enabled, if this laptop plugged into the switch and this did not like the laptop, it would just shut down the port. Here we can show that the maximum MAC addresses that this port would accept is 1. And the total right now is 0. And we'll get more into detail about this in a few moments. Let's go back into interface 5, where the hacker is sitting. In order to enable port security, this port needs to be an access port. So we type in switch port mode access. By default, all ports are dynamic. And a dynamic port cannot be enabled with port security. You will get an error command if you try enabling port security on a dynamic port. So you have to make sure it's an access port. Now we can go and type in switch port security. Hit enter, and now it is enabled. Now if we go back to show port security, interface FA05, now we can see it's enabled. So let's unplug the hacker's laptop. And let's bring a second laptop into the play. So this is an executive, this is a hacker. We want to make it so that when the executive connects to that switch, the switch lets him in, but when the hacker, an unrecognized laptop, connects to the switch, it keeps it out. How does a switch identify which device it can trust and which device it can't trust? So first we have to ask ourselves, how does the switch identify any computer? A switch identifies computers by reading their MAC addresses. As you can see, this switch knows 7 different MAC addresses right now. And now if I count the neighboring devices, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 devices connected to the switch. Including the ones connected to the hub, there are 6 devices connected to the switch. So how come we have 7 different VLANs in here? And I can tell you right now that this connection right here is connected to Gigabit Ethernet 1, and this connection is connected to Fast Ethernet 23. So with that knowledge, if we're looking at all these MAC addresses, 6 of them are connected in this port, and 1 of them is connected in this port. So all of these devices aren't even showing up here right now. So what are all these computers? Well, every computer so far, whenever this computer wants to talk to the management, whenever the management wants to talk to HR or accounting or the engineering department, it all gets sent through the switches, and then it goes into the router, and it comes back out the router. It gets distributed into the right VLAN based on the destination IP of the packet. And all of those packets also have a source MAC address, and that source MAC address gets stored in this MAC address table known as the CAM table. So let me show you some different modes of port security. The first one will go into that interface and enable switch port security. If we put in question mark, we have a few different options here. Let's go with the MAC address. There's two different ways of using this MAC address port security command. The first one, we can enter in the 48-bit MAC address of the device we want to let through, or we can do what's called sticky. So if we were to manually enter the MAC address, all we'd have to do is go into the executive's computer and type in ipconfig/all. You can copy and paste this address, the physical address, and we could copy it right there. However, we're going to type in sticky. You'll see right now what that's going to do. I'm going to connect the executive's port 5. From this laptop, I'm going to go ahead and type in ping.0.0.50. So I'm pinging the marketing department. And it went through successfully. Now, sticky means that if we go into show port security interface FA05, there's a maximum number of 1 MAC addresses that is allowed through this port. Right now, there is 1 MAC address, and that MAC address became a sticky MAC address. And the last MAC address that came through here is this one. So let's go ahead and unplug the executive's laptop. Let's go ahead and plug in the hacker's laptop now. And bam, he can't connect. Right away, that port saw that the MAC address did not match the sticky MAC address that it had in its database. So it went down. And the only way to turn it back on is if we unplug it, go back into the switch, go to configure terminal, and no shut. Now it's back on, so we could plug the executive's laptop in. So now the only MAC address that's allowed on the 5th port of this switch is the executive's laptop. If we want to add more MAC addresses to this, we would type in switch port security, type in maximum. We can increase the maximum amount of addresses that the switch can allow through its ports. We'll leave it at 1 for now. Let's do the same scenario with a different type of violation mode. We'll type in violation, question mark. There's 3 different violation modes. By default, our ports are configured for shutdown. That means what you just saw. The switch sees a foreign MAC address and shuts down the port. For restriction mode, the port will see a foreign MAC address and it will not shut the port down. However, it will block the connection, giving us a notification that someone is trying to connect to the switch. Protect mode does the same thing as restrict, except it does not notify us. So let's go ahead and type in restrict. Let's see what happens when we plug in that laptop. So I'm going to go ahead and ping the marketing department. Okay, there you go. So it's working. Now I'm going to plug in that laptop, the hacker, and now let's try pinging the marketing department. And it doesn't work. And it's not going through right now. However, the line is still on and active. Let's sign into our switch. Now if we type in show port security int and the interface that we're plugged into, whoa. See, if we look down here, it says security violation count 4. That's interesting. So it's giving us a notification that this laptop has pinged the switch 4 times on that port, but nothing went through because the switch is blocking this computer and this port is still online. So now we can unplug the hacker computer, plug the executive computer back in, and we're able to go through no problem. So now you have a basic understanding of what port security is, how it works, and why it's so important to be implemented on a network. We hardly scratched the surface in this video. This is a mere introduction, and I will be creating more videos in the future on this topic, so stay tuned for those videos, and I'll see you next time.